AI is making agency work faster, but Sophie Brannon believes that if junior marketers use it too early, they may never learn how to think for themselves. Welcome to the Page 2 podcast, where we uncover the strategies, systems, and tactical decisions that move brands beyond Page 2 and into real visibility across search and answer engines. Today we're talking with Sophie Brannon, co-founder and director of StudioHawk US. Sophie moved from the UK to Atlanta to build the agency's American operation from scratch. In less than 2 years, she has had to make decisions about hiring, culture, pricing, client service, and what an SEO agency should look like in the age of AI search. The real story here is not whether ChatGPT is replacing Google or whether every company suddenly needs a geo strategy. It is how an agency changes when content briefs, technical audits, site architecture, and research workflows can all be produced faster than ever. Sophie explains where AI genuinely improves the work, where the industry is selling snake oil, and why visibility inside an AI platform means very little if it cannot be tied back to traffic, revenue, or a real business outcome. She also describes a much bigger shift in the agency model. Teams may need fewer people but larger technology budgets. Clients may eventually pay for token usage instead of hours, and junior employees may enter the industry with powerful tools before they have developed the judgment required to use them well. That last point creates one of the most interesting tensions in the conversation. StudioHawk is investing heavily in AI workflows, but Sophie bans new hires from using AI during their first 3 months. She wants them to understand the work before they automate it. This conversation hit close to home for us because we were working through many of the same questions. How to scale without adding unnecessary layers, how to train people when AI offers an instant shortcut, and how to keep the quality of the thinking ahead of the speed of the tools. The Page 2 podcast is brought to you by Moving Traffic Media, the digital marketing agency Joe and I founded, specializing in SEO, answer engine optimization, and performance media. Learn more at movingtrafficmedia.com. Now, let's get into it. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Page 2 podcast. I'm your host, John Clark, and I'm joined as always by my partner at Moving Traffic Media, Joe DeVita.
Hello.
Today, we're excited to welcome Sophie Brannon, co-founder and director of StudioHawk in the US, an Atlanta-based SEO and AI search agency. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and we've been going back and forth trying to make our schedules work over the past almost year, I think. So we're super excited to have you, Sophie. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat. And again, thanks for the patience of all of the rescheduling. It's been crazy.
Yeah, I was checking my notes. It was like 6 months ago I started planning the conversation. So we've got 100 questions for you, of which we'll get to maybe 6.
Quick fire, let's go.
But StudioHawk, so maybe most well known as a big agency in Australia. We know they have a big office in London. I know you grew up kind of near London, but you are in the US. How did this all happen? How did you not end up in London? Or how did you end up working beginning this US office? Why you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's one I get quite a lot because this, and I was saying this to John just before as well. Like we have an Aussie looking after London, got a Colombian guy looking after Australia and a Brit looking after America. And it's a little bit all over the place. But so what happened is I grew up in agency. I started my career as a copywriter, spent 7-8 years at my first agency based in the UK. And I got to a point there where I kind of hit a bit of a ceiling. I was in like a client services director level. I'd never had that role before. We'd replaced the head of SEO, which is what like the role I was in before that. And I kind of got to this point where I was like, I've since kind of 18, 19, been working at this agency. I was like, I want to travel. Like I want to kind of step back. So I quit the agency and went traveling to New Zealand and Australia. And I'd met Harry, the founder of StudioHawk, maybe a few years prior to that at an event in London that my old boss sent me to. Stayed in touch, became really good friends with him and Anthony, who runs the London office. And as I was traveling around Australia, basically started running out of cash and was like, hey, it's very expensive in New Zealand. I'm running out of cash. Australia's expensive. Have you got any consulting work, anything like that I can just, do a bit while I'm on the go? So I spoke to Harry and he was like, hey, look, it's my business, but I don't run the day to day. I've got like a general manager, speak to him. I was like, great, I'll have a little chat with him, and ended up consulting with the Australian team. So during that period, I was looking after some of their accounts and kind of just supporting their internal teams, helped kind of restructure their leadership team, brought in digital PR as like a brand new service and all those kind of things, and done quite a lot, like quite a high level with them in Australia. Then when I came back to the UK, I ended up not going back to agency. I ended up actually speaking to a friend of mine based in Philly, Nick Eubanks. I think he's in Miami now. And asked basically, hey, like, do you have or do you know of anyone hiring in the US? Because the UK kind of had like a big salary bubble burst at the time I got back. I couldn't get really like a good head of SEO role for anywhere near the kind of salary I was being paid for before. We're now in like a remote first world. And I was like, well, I'll try my luck and see if I can get anything out in the States. And ended up working with a company called Rush Audits and was moved in-house as their director of SEO, and they're based out in Philly. So I really started to get to know and understand like the American, I think I said Australian, the American market out there in Philadelphia. Really just kind of, getting to know the people, getting to know the culture, because surprisingly, big culture difference between the UK and the US, which I really just didn't think there would be, right? And at my previous agency, had done quite a bit in the US anyway. So I worked there for about 2 years and then got a phone call from Harry just out of the blue one day. And he goes, look, we've been thinking about opening up a branch in the US. It's strategically the next kind of best market for us to move into. It's one of the biggest markets in the world. Now's the right time. Do you want to be a part of it? And then, fast forward a year and a half later, and here we are. We hit, I think, our first 1.4 million in like 9 months of opening the office, and it's been flying ever since. So it's been a good run so far.
So you're 18 months into it, you're living in Atlanta, you're building this agency. What are you most focused on? So I will say, we know StudioHawk is kind of famously known for not having an account team, where you have your discipline experts, and those discipline experts have to have the client service skills. So are you building unique disciplines to help with, you mentioned digital PR, but is it an SEO discipline, a GEO discipline? What's your big challenge right now?
Yeah, so I think the AI search kind of part of it is not necessarily a challenge, but it's obviously a big evolution of the industry as a whole. So we are doing a lot of work in the AI search space, and we're doing our own we're building out a framework, which I'm really excited to kind of launch in the next kind of few months. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be really exciting. There's all sorts of things that are going to be coming out with that. But it's looking at, we're SEO and AI search specialists. Each individual member of the team are trained up from the ground up in the StudioHawk way of, this is how we do SEO and this is how we do AI search. There is a huge crossover between the two, which is super helpful. There are some nuances there as well, but we are replicating the same model that we have in Australia and in London of, we are direct to specialists. There's no fluffy account manager middleman, anything like that. It's 100% you're speaking to the person who's not only leading strategy and kind of getting to know the business, but actually in the back end of websites and implementing the work as well.
We actually operate on a very similar model for all the same reasons, right? It's like the person closest to the work is learning about the business. And we've just always felt, both Joe and I came from a much bigger agency where we had all those extraneous layers. And it just feels like the quality of the work and the knowledge of the client is just so much better in that structure. But I did want to ask you about the title of co-founder. I was curious, how does that work with a company that at its core is sort of 10 years old, but you sort of have this sort of new, I guess, US arm? Are you the co-founder of that arm? Is it co-founder of StudioHawk in general? How does that look in a company structure, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the US arm is completely separate to the UK, and the UK is completely separate to Australia. We're completely separate to Australia. So we're completely different entities, completely different bank accounts. It's all its own individual structure. So that's kind of where the co-founder then comes in, because that's kind of my remit. We do obviously connect the dots. We are a global business, but we're in 3 completely different stages of kind of life cycle. Australia's big brother that's been running 10 years and figured it out. There's 80 odd people working across Melbourne and Sydney, and they're doing their thing. They're dominating out in Australia. We've got the UK branch, which is owned or part owned and run by Anthony down in London, and that's completely different. I think he opened it in 2019. He moved over from Australia. I think his wife wanted to move over to London, and it was kind of a big punt, and he'd only been doing SEO for 2 years, and it was either going to work or it wasn't. And he's been incredibly successful over in London, which has been great. And then we launched the US as a completely separate thing, and it's been great because we've been able to learn from the mistakes of the other 2 businesses and the other 2 branches, but ultimately it's a completely different market. So we can take some of the best of the processes, we can take some of the best of the ideas, we can leverage some of the brand. But ultimately, from what I've seen, American businesses don't care how good you are in Australia. They want to see what you've done in the US. So it's all kind of almost starting from scratch.
I did have a question around that, but I first wanted to congratulate you guys on the 2 US Agency Award finalists nominations. So congratulations on that. I was curious, like Joe mentioned, you're sort of 18 months into this. Is there something you're most proud of, like outside of things that would hit a press release that you can, think of? Like, I'm sure there's so many things happening. Is there something that isn't, I don't want to call it not press worthy, but like something that you feel is just like, this is just such a good personal accomplishment over these past 18 months?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the team that we've built out in Atlanta. We didn't get it completely right straight away. There was a couple of kind of hires that we did have to kind of, say, hey, it's not quite the culture fit that we want to really build here, which I think is the same with any growing business. You're always going to have some of those growing pains, but we've got our 2 members of staff, Matt and Charlie, who are our day oneers, and they've been with us since we launched the office, and they're progressing incredibly well, really kind of stepping up. And as of January, we brought in another junior, senior and SEO copywriter who originally was contracting with us from kind of October last year that we brought on full time. And it is just, they're a great team, and I'm not in the office 100% of the time. So for them to be able to kind of get in, get their heads down, really just gel, do great work, and then, just come to me if and when they need stuff. It's pretty crazy to me to be able to almost step back a little bit and be like, whoa, we're only again like 18 months in. Like, what do you mean you don't need me? I go before I fly back to the UK. I'm just like, oh, hey guys, anything anyone needs from me? They're like, no. I'm like, oh, okay then. Why am I here?
Yeah.
So, that means you're doing a good job.
Well, it means they're doing a good job as well, right? But yeah, it's been like the culture we're building is really underpinning like what StudioHawk's always been about. And the fact that we're able to replicate that so successfully in our Atlanta branch, and the team are just gelling so well, and they're all excited to come to work every day, and they're always asking, oh, when's the next team event? Like, we love going out and hanging out together, and they're hanging out together outside of work and all of these kind of things. Like, it's awesome to see how that's built so quickly.
So building the culture is part of your job. You have an operations role for this for the US company, and like creating the company culture is part of your job. But I mean, I'm sure you're involved in sales, you're managing people. Walk us through like maybe a typical week. How are you shifting your time against different responsibilities?
Yeah, I think it's a typical kind of early business founder mentality of I am involved in everything and I do everything, right? So I think the main thing I don't touch now, bar maybe 2 bigger accounts, is the actual client work. So we've managed to get a nice setup where I've already been able to kind of step back from that, hand over clients to the rest of the team. I don't have to touch it day to day in terms of actual client deliverables, but everything else is, it's your admin, it's the operations, it's the marketing, it's the sales, it's, making sure people get paid on time, and, chasing up invoices and all of that kind of stuff. So a little bit of everything. Training as well, still really hands-on with a lot of the training stuff, because not only do I want them to do it like the StudioHawk way and kind of continue that mentality, but I have 12 years of experience now that they can draw from, and a lot of the staff members, they are green. Like, we typically will hire juniors and train them from the ground up. We have got one senior in, but I think she's only been in the industry 3-4 years herself. So just making sure like they can also leverage me and my knowledge and my expertise. And I've worked agency for 8 years. I've worked on hundreds of websites in hundreds of different niches. I've never niched down bar the 2 years in custom apparel. So really being able to help them with their own progressions and their own knowledge as well. So yeah, there's not really a set week. It just depends on how many leads are coming in and how much we need to push the marketing and what's going on with the team at the time, really.
One of the things that StudioHawk is also known for is not requiring long-term contracts. And this, I think, is from a bad experience Harry had with his father, where his father was sold some snake oil and it taught Harry a big lesson. Is that a true story?
Yeah, no, it is definitely a true story. Yeah. And it's something like we see in the industry a lot, like generally speaking, like there's just so much out there. And especially now with like the GEO bros, all of this that's happening, and you see it all on LinkedIn of everyone's just trying to sell a dream, and then they'll lock you into a 12-month contract that you don't even realize you've signed because you haven't gone through the small print, which a lot of small business owners don't. Like, they don't have these big legal teams that are kind of really scaling through 20 pages of T's and C's. Like, it just doesn't happen, right? So yeah, for us, like the model's always been, we don't lock you in for a long-term contract. There is an notice period if you do want to cancel, because we do need to obviously make sure we're wrapping things up. Like, we have put time into months coming up and all these kind of things. But we also want to prove to businesses why they should be working with us. And we're very transparent about that from day one. Like, if a lead comes across my desk that is not a good fit for SEO and they should be putting their money into something else, like, I'm not going to make them sign on for SEO. I'm not going to sell them a dream, because it's not good for anyone at the end of the day. And there's nothing worse than, when you do lock someone into a 12-month contract and they don't want to work with you anymore. The business is struggling for some reason that's completely out of the SEO control or out of the marketing control. And then, they can't physically leave, and it becomes a really nasty situation that's just not nice for anyone. And we just don't want to be a business like that. But when it comes to like forecasting and all those kind of things, I mean, yeah, a lot of it is we're very confident in the work we do and that clients will stay long term. And, as we've got new inbound coming in, we can then model and forecast based off of that. We've got targets we want to be hitting, et cetera, et cetera. But we're never going to hire just because we've closed a deal. Like, we're always going to try and be ahead.
Be ahead of hiring. So you determine how many you're going to hire based on how many new clients that you bring in. You have to, this is like the most delicate balance with an agency. You don't want to get too ahead of hiring or too behind it, because then you can't service the clients. It's tricky. John and I always say hiring is the riskiest thing that we do. It's like you have to really take a leap of faith on somebody and hope that they can provide the service that you want to provide. Like the performance part, I think we found we've got good process in place. If you follow our process, if you learn to do things the way we like things to be done, like performance will get there. But it's the service part that like when we have to let people go, it's usually because of the service part. And I think this is probably a problem that you have too, because you don't hire the account people who are typically the service people. So it takes even longer to find that right person.
Yeah, it definitely does. But then we also have a culture with how we hire as well. Like, I don't really care where you've been before. I don't care how many years of experience you've got. Like, I could teach SEO to a monkey if I really had to. Like, it's not the hardest thing to do in the world, but it takes a lot of time and it does take a lot of expertise. And, you need to kind of be constant and consistent with it. But we like to hire wholesome nerds. And that's ultimately what I'm looking for. When I'm having these conversations, when I'm talking to people, if we can gel, like we're gelling right now, Joe, and we can have a chat and have a good conversation, like that's a big win for me and a big tick. And we'll go through that process. Like, Harry is obviously, over the last 10 years or so of StudioHawk, he's figured out who is a good person and who's not a good fit, but he can't be on every interview, right? So we've all kind of had to really pick some of that up as well. But as long as I get a good vibe, generally speaking, and they fit the wholesome nerd bracket and they're passionate about something, then I know that we can have that as a transferable skill, and you can teach everything else.
You must have a standard set of questions though. Is there one or two questions in there that really helps you understand the personality side of it? Not like what would you do to, not some SEO scenario, but are there a couple of like personality questions that you really love to ask to help try to understand, is this person going to be a cultural fit for us?
What are you most passionate about? And that's it. And seeing how they answer that question, because if it's a work related answer or it's something that they think we want to hear, then already it's an immediate no. If it's, I'm really passionate about music, like I do music in my own time, or I love to read, or I love to play computer games. Like some of the best hires we've ever made have been gamers, and really like intense gamers. Harry is one himself. Like, I grew up playing RuneScape. It's one of those things. Like, and then just seeing how they answer that, and that's normally the big tell for us. And it's funny. It's one you can very easily use also on a date for any listeners. So it also works quite well.
I always say that's like Joe's love language, is talking about building culture, hiring.
John and I have been partners. We've worked together almost 20 years, but we've been partners in moving traffic media for 9 now. And I think I have a role similar to yours, where I look after mostly the operations of the business. You don't have a partner. You have to do everything. You've got to do the operations, the sales, the management of the team, the culture. Like, you're also the disciplinary expert. It's got to be tough.
It's a little bit of everything, but it's been exciting for me as well, like going down this venture, because like I've done SEO for ages, and I did get to a point where I was like, I'm not bored of it because I love it. And it's like, it's something I genuinely really enjoy as a job. For me, something I really like to do is just constantly push myself. And this was obviously just before the AI evolution came out, because I think I would have been pretty happy of just getting straight back in the tools, and I'm still doing stuff at silly o'clock at night, of tapping away while my partner's asleep, just like, I'm going to build something cool in Claude or whatever. But being able to like learn so much from setting up the business, because everything's completely different to the UK, like structure of the business, even just HR rules. Health insurance was something I never knew about really. Like I knew you had to have it, but like how to then offer that to staff. Like it's been a very big, exciting learning curve. It's kind of setting all of this up. So it's been a journey, but it's been a fun one so far.
Sophie, I want to shift gears into the AI conversation in a second. But before we do that, a quick word about the team behind this show. The Page 2 podcast is produced by Moving Traffic Media. That's our agency. Moving Traffic Media is a digital marketing agency that specializes in SEO, answer engine optimization, and performance media. In plain English, we help brands show up in traditional search and in AI answers when people ask ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, or Google about them. And we back that up with everything around it, from paid media and social to web development built for how AI agents actually browse. Joe DeVita and I founded Moving Traffic Media, and we're headquartered in New York with a second office in Miami. So if your brand isn't showing up in AI answers the way it should, that's what we do every day. You can find us at movingtrafficmedia.com. Okay, back to the show. Well, maybe that's a good transition into some AI conversations. You mentioned there's a framework coming out soon, so we'll definitely be on the lookout for that. But certainly your clients must be coming and asking about, this shiny new thing. You talk a lot about not being distracted by some of the shiny new things that are being pitched on LinkedIn and elsewhere. How do you sort of level set with a client? Like, yes, this strategy makes sense, or these two things are highly similar. If we're doing a good SEO strategy, that will carry over to GEO or AEO or whatever you're calling it. How do you sort of right size a client when they come to you with those types of questions?
Yeah, I think it's gone for a few different phases. I think back end of last year, it was no one cares about SEO. We just want to show up on ChatGPT. And there had to be a really big education curve there with every single call we had, every conversation we had with clients, because some would come and panic. They're like, oh, I've been searching my own, I want to be the best, shoe brand in Atlanta or whatever it is. I'm not showing up in ChatGPT. You're not doing good work, blah, blah, blah. It's like there has to be this big kind of discussion point of this is what crosses over. This is how this is what we're doing and how we're doing it. This is where you're showing, this is where you're not. If you're just searching for random prompts, you're not necessarily going to show up. There's so much personalization in it, and really just trying to talk through all of the different scenarios and show the similarities and the differences. But there are some different things, and there's all of these, all of this talk, relevance engineering, vector embeddings, it gets cosine similarity. It can get very, very jargon and heavy and very technical, but kind of bringing that back up to a stakeholder level, which is how I think most, especially for us, we're quite mid-range budget in comparison to a lot of agencies out there. Our minimums are around $3,000 a month. So we do tend to get a lot of small, medium-sized businesses with quite green marketing managers or even kind of founders and things like that coming and talking to us. They're not going to understand things like vector embeddings and cosine similarity. It's just going to go straight over their head. So big education piece, bringing it back up to stakeholder kind of level when we're talking about it, making sure we're tracking a lot of this stuff. So in our SEO reports, the minute we could start pulling through kind of AI data, we were pulling it through, and then just making sure the strategies aligned with both channels, while also saying, hey, do you know how much revenue in total brands are getting from AI search? Oh, about 0.007%, out of the 100 we surveyed and looked into their analytics, backing it all up with data and things like that as well. And just being on the pulse, sharing news, sending out newsletters, and even just me reaching out to clients and doing these check-ins going, hey, don't be scared about it. This is exciting time. Things are changing, but this is what you need to actually care about. This is what you don't, and kind of just bringing it back to them.
I'd love to talk a little bit about the tracking piece. Joe and I go back and forth on this all the time. What tool should we test? What tool should we sort of land on as our, enterprise solution? Ahrefs has been our, I'm going to call it traditional SEO tool for a long time. They're baking in some AI metrics. But when you think about reporting, I guess specifically around AI, what are maybe the things you're reporting against? Is it purely citation volume? Or I feel like there's a whole slew of new acronyms that are, coming out as it relates to visibility and, share of citations and all these sorts of things. So how are you guys thinking about it? And I guess maybe even if you can share, maybe what tools are you specifically using around that sort of thing?
No, absolutely. So same with any kind of marketing channel. I think the most important thing is to drive it back to revenue. Now, it's not always a one-to-one, but we do use and leverage, GA4's innate AI search, or I think it's AI organic as their kind of channel grouping now that they've pulled out. And before that happened, we were then leveraging kind of referral sourcing and, just trying to format our own filters and things like that from GA4 and pulling that into our watermark reports, and basically the same as Looker Studio, just custom dashboards for clients. When it comes to the visibility side of things, like naturally, that's also what a lot of clients do want to see, which I completely understand. It's not a direct one-to-one of, oh, just because you're visible everywhere means that you're going to get a direct conversion from that, but we need to be talking about it. So we've used SEMrush, we've used Ahrefs brand radar. The SEMrush AI, we typically land a little bit more on. It's got a lot of really good kind of AI recommendations that typically translate very well into like the SEO strategies we're already doing. So it's almost like third-party backup of, hey, we told you we need to be doing comparative guides, so let's do the comparative guides, because SEMrush is also saying we should too, and clients seem to buy into that a little bit more sometimes. But when it comes to individual prompt tracking, Peak.ai is like a really good one. And we used Profound a little bit. It got very expensive. It is a good platform, but we kind of didn't need half of the features that they offered because we are only relatively small in the US at least. So it wasn't quite a good fit for us there. But yeah, we've used Peak a lot. And there's so many cool features coming out on Peak now. I think Lily Ray posted yesterday about a content clustering you can do to kind of pull out some query fan outs and then pull that into Claude and build out content strategy around that. So yeah, like they're typically the main ones that we'll use. But when it comes to the metrics, it's the overall visibility, citations, mentions. Is it going up? Is it going down? What does that look like? But specifically in areas that we care about, not just random prompts, which people can definitely be showing up for. And then how that actually translates to traffic and revenue, because that's the most important thing for a lot of stakeholders at the end of the day.
You mentioned citations, which is such a core component of getting included in an LLM result. And you've talked a little bit about in other podcasts around the component of link building, which I know you're a strong believer in. And certainly that drives some of that citation visibility. I wanted to sort of try to bring it back to the conversation around contracts, because a lot of times that is like a pass-through cost to a client. So how do you think about, you mentioned a little something around like a $3,000 like minimum retainer. So let's say someone has $3,000. Do you have a process or like a workflow to decide, okay, 20% of that $3,000 is going to go to link building. We're just going to absorb that cost. Or is that something that you, as part of the strategy, sort of define what is needed, right? Sort of based on the competitive landscape, maybe where the gaps are. And then you say, hey, client, to compete well, we think you need X, X, and X. That would be a supplemental charge. How do you guys think about that? Because I feel like that is, as an agency owner, something that we struggle with as well. Just sort of figure out what that process looks like. How do we handle the costs?
Yeah, it's a really tough one. And it's one I think, same with content as well, actually. I think each of them do it slightly differently. For us in the US, we tend to bake it all in. So we'll figure out like a rough, maybe hourly equation or something like that, where we can then like break it down internally. We don't really turn around to clients and go, oh, it's like this many hours for one standard link or anything like that. It's just based on how we can then, track that back and when we're doing our time tracking and things. But yeah, we'll typically absorb it. Every client campaign and strategy is obviously bespoke to them. So it just depends what they need based on their competitive landscape, who they're going up against, what they want to be visible for, how competitive that SERP is. There's so many different variables there. Also where they've started. So when it comes to that kind of like traditional link building, so like your guest posting, your skyscraper techniques, all those kind of things, broken link building, etc., that will be baked in. Digital PR, on the other hand, because it is a separate discipline, we will have that as a separate retainer, and that is actually contracted. So that's a 6 or a 12-month sprint. But we do a money back guarantee on that if based on like a KPI. So we'll say, I think for a 6-month sprint off the top of my head, just making sure I've got the new packages because we just launched the new packages recently. Here's 8 points and a link is 1 point and a brand mention that's unlinked is 0.5 of a point or like half a point. And then over the 6-month period, we say we're going to get you 8 points. And if we don't, we'll do a pro rata kind of guarantee, pay you back for whatever we don't hit. Because with digital PR, there are no guarantees and it's a really hard buy-in for a lot of clients of, oh, I'm just going to throw loads of money at you and we may not get anything out of it, right? So that's kind of how we do it with the digital PR kind of links and mentions side, which is a little bit more structured. But yeah, the traditional link building's all kind of like factored in.
Sort of interesting. We haven't talked a lot about link building on this podcast, at least as of yet. Maybe one other question there real quick. So let's say I love the point system. Makes a ton of sense. So let's say you're going to generate 8 points. Are there any metrics associated with those 8 points? Domain authority, domain rating, all those DR type of things are highly debatable as to whether they're real or not. But yeah, do you put any metrics to what that point gets you, or is it purely we're going to generate 8 points worth of links and we believe, that will be sufficient?
Yeah, so we do it. We were looking at kind of tiering the systems sometimes. So, for example, a tier 1 link would be Washington Post, for example. A tier 2 might be a more regional like publication. A tier 3 could be like a mum and pop blog, something like that. We do have a DR minimum metric in place. I think it's like DR30, DR35. But as you say, and we use domain rating. We've seen especially Ahrefs' domain rating because it's a little bit less easily manipulated. It's not completely foolproof, but compared to like domain authority and authority score, it's better in our opinion, at least in our experience. So yeah, we were looking at a tiered system, and if there's different values given to like, a Washington Post link versus a mum pop blog. Personally, I'd say a Washington Post is way more valuable, but it's really hard to then prove that out because that might be an unbranded or a non-linked mention. It's just so many variables there. But yeah, we try and put a domain rating metric in because it's something clients can look at. We put a traffic minimum metric in as well. I can't remember what that is off the top of my head, but there are minimums there. We also look at what that website is actually showing up for. So if it is like a mum and pop blog, for example, and it's, it is part of a PBN that's actually accidentally got a link on it by, something like that's happened. Well, we don't want that. So, that's
Right.
not what we're going to claim. So if it happens, it happens. We'll try and get it off, but we check everything from scratch really just to see what the positives are from it.
Link outreach may be that one responsibility where I guess traditionally it's always been the role of an SEO professional. We link growth, link outreach has got to be part of your job. But now with digital PR becoming, I don't know, it feels like in the Venn diagram of SEO and digital PR, they're starting to come together, and link building, link outreach seems to be like the case study to move that responsibility from an SEO team to a digital PR team. Sounds like you've done that. Am I right?
Yeah, kind of. So we have a link building team that their sole job is traditional link building. So that's not like my SEO and AI search specialists won't do the link building stuff. We will send our requirements to our link building team who are based in Australia just because it's easier to have them there. They're already established. And as we get bigger, we'll probably move some over to us as well. So yeah, we'll just send off our requirements. We need X amount of links with these anchors and these target URLs. If we can get them, great, fantastic, report back by the end of the month, etc. Then digital PR is a completely separate department as well. But we do try and have some form of crossover, at least in terms of communication and reporting, because there is, like, as you said, such a Venn diagram of digital PR can really influence SEO, but the SEO can also really influence digital PR. I do see them as different disciplines. I think you need different skill sets for SEO versus digital PR. Digital PR is very creative. You have to have crazy ideas sometimes to get them to land, especially in very kind of niche industries. When you've got clients, I don't know, in some rogue part of construction, you're like, how am I going to even think of anything fun journalists want to link to for this, right? So yeah, really, I do see them as separate, but they need to feed into each other. So any client that's on for both, we make sure, everything is as combined as possible when it comes to strategy.
The digital PR specialist also needs to be really comfortable with rejection. You spend so much part of your, just trying to pitch these stories and these articles, and 99% of the time, people don't even respond to your email. That is a very tough trait for an SEO professional to have, because over the years, if I make this little tweak, I'm going to see a benefit in traffic or rankings, but they're like completely opposite people. And I was just like, I'm just trying to figure out how to bring the circles together with digital PR and SEO. I feel like the next year or two, these two disciplines are just going to, paid search and SEO once were forced together. And now most great agencies, those two teams collaborate really well with each other. I don't know that there's a ton of case studies around the digital PR and the SEO team collaborating well together. It feels like it has to happen now if we're optimizing towards LLMs. There was no question there, Sophie. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say.
Well, no, it's totally true. And we done some really good case studies. I think we did one with QuickBooks out in Australia where we was working with their rest of the world team. So I think we were going after, the South African region for a bit, and then I think maybe the Indonesian region and Singapore for a little while. And the way we kind of did it was the SEO team would be in charge of core keyword research, building the pages, making sure that they were as optimized as possible. Digital PR team would be in charge of finding some of the latest news, the reactives, the expert commentary in those different regions that we could then reach out to. Or data-led campaigns that then we could build pages on the website and make sure the internal linking was there, so it passed the authority through once that was then linked to, and like that collaborated really well. But that was a whole process to get that set up, because DPRs want to run off in one direction, SEOs want to run off in another, paid media teams are doing something over here. Like really tying that in is a lot of work, but it when it's done right, it has a major impact.
I mean, it sounds like a ton of process to get those things working well. I know you've talked a little bit about AI being a solution for some of that process. I was curious maybe about where you see AI fitting into sort of the agency processes that you're involved with. And then maybe to sort of layer on top of that, you also mentioned that you hire a lot more of like junior folks. And I think the default for someone is now just to turn to ChatGPT and say, hey, do this research for me. But it's not always the same as what you're going to get with the traditional process. So how do you sort of think about the automation in terms of scaling, but still, I don't know, be able to teach these junior folks how to do it properly, and then where AI can sort of fit into that process?
Yeah, great question. So we now have an AI enablement team. So I think it was our Sydney lead, super interested in like AI search, was doing loads of stuff in his own time. It's just like super geeky about it, loves it. So we're like, cool, you want to lead it? Let's go. So we took him off of Sydney, and now he kind of leads that alongside kind of a web developer, an engineer, and an automation specialist. So they're building loads of really cool stuff in the background. Again, more stuff for us to talk about in a few months, hopefully. Fingers crossed, everything's ready. But the idea is ultimately we'll have a lot of AI structure in place that's then going to lead to a lot faster execution is probably the best way I can describe it. So things that clients would have traditionally got back in month 6, month 7 of a SEO campaign, they can probably get it in month 3 now, because we're able to move a lot faster. And the SEO specialist's kind of main role is going to be the communication and relationship building, the overarching strategy, and the creativity, because they're the 3 things that AI can't do very well, and I don't see it doing particularly well in the near future. So I think that's one part of it. Then when it comes to the juniors, so this was one of the core problems I had with a couple of team members when, they just didn't end up working out, because everything was a default to ChatGPT. I was like, let's put this together, default to ChatGPT. I've shown you how to do it 4 times now, default to ChatGPT. I was like, right, this isn't happening. So I actually banned them. There's no AI going on in the first 3 months of you working here. We're going to do everything manually from scratch. It's going to take you so much longer. And you're going to have to just do it this way and the hard way. It's how I did it. It's how some of the rest of the staff did it. This is how you're doing it. And once you know how to do it, you get privileged back and you can start using Claude. And then honestly, it's the only way it can work sometimes, because especially when they're coming fresh out of college, things like that, and they've been leveraging it so much and they're being taught how to use it, and it's amazing, and they can do some incredible stuff with it. They're forgetting the actual thought process behind it. They're forgetting the strategic side of it. And that ultimately is going to be that job in the future. If they can't hone that strategic skill, then they're just not going to be a good SEO in the future. So that's what we just need to do. So unfortunately, it's like, sorry guys, we're done, not using it. See you later. And then we have to kind of build it up from there. But we've really lucky where we've literally back end of last year launched like a brand new learning management system, like our LMS, all branded. I think we use Sysmic for it. It is fantastic. We've got all of our videos, all of our presentations, all of our SOPs uploaded. And we sit the juniors down and go, cool, workshop for the first kind of few days. Here's a task. Do another workshop. Here's a few more tasks, and it kind of really builds that layer of learning as they go. Yeah, it was a learning curve as well for me, because whole new thing, whole new region, and everyone was talking ChatGPT from the start. I was like, whoa, not cool, bro.
You mentioned there's a gentleman in Sydney who has a new title of AI integration specialist or something like that. And I'm curious, is he's trying to fit in with each discipline to find ways for them to be more productive or more efficient in some process. Does that come down to just a very organized prompt library where he says, here are 10 great prompts you want to use for your keyword research, and here are 10 great prompts you want to use for link outreach? What does that look like? What does his organization provide to everyone?
Yeah, so building out the prompt library, building out a bunch of skills already embedded in our organizations, building out a bunch of artifacts, and actually having and building things where, say we want a website crawl outside of Screaming Frog and we want our own skill to run it for us, then that gets plugged into there. It runs it, and then that's already integrated into our organization. So in Australia, all 80 of them will have the on the plan or enterprise plan organizations, so they get full access to all of that. So again, then it's more SOPs, it's more processes, it's more teaching people how to do it. It's not perfect yet. take a while for that to happen, but we're already seeing like things moving a lot quicker. I think IA structure mapping was one that was launched the other day, and that's been phenomenal. And it's been also a lot of token management, like quite frankly. So when you've 120 people globally, that's a lot of potential token usage if people are just building their own stuff all the time. So it's kind of just honing in on that as well and just making sure that's managed correctly.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Like you hear for like development companies, each person gets a token quota, and in some cases it's unlimited because I don't know, the company wants them to figure out how to leverage it as much as possible. In other cases, they have, I don't know, 1 million tokens a month or something like that. Is that how you guys are thinking about that management, or are you putting, I don't know, a budget in place, and during that month, if that budget gets hit, then sorry, you guys can't use tokens for the rest of the month or something like that? Does that make sense? Like, how are you even trying to put guardrails around that? Because I feel like it could get expensive incredibly fast.
Very, yeah. And it is an evolving process, and it's a really interesting one to talk to other agency owners about as well, because everyone's got a bit of a different opinion on it. Based on, if you're a senior, you should be using X amount of tokens versus a junior, but then maybe they're using it more because they don't know how to use it properly and all these kind of things. So we have a budget in place for it for the year. That's going to be an evolving budget 100% because we don't know how much it's going to cost to run half these things. We're being very strategic, with what we're using and how we're connecting things. Are we using, say, SEMrush or Ahrefs as MCP, or are we using data for SEO that's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper and have the same data but without the fancy interface? So it's kind of like weighing up a lot of those options as well and like how that's being managed. That's also where the AI enablement team come in to really kind of look at those budgets and look at that token usage. But it's going to be like an ever-changing thing, especially over kind of the next few years, as even with like using Fable for however long that gets extended to, and then it goes and it comes back, we don't know what's going to happen, and like that has a very high token usage, so we have to be like, make sure you use Sonnet and don't use Fable. Like just kind of really putting those guardrails in place as well, so people aren't just smashing their token usage just running a basic query and in a really kind of crazy operating system. So yeah, there's not really a true answer to that. It is kind of, we have the budget, we're going to kind of see how things go. It's kind of distributed across different teams, like the AI enablement team. Harry's got an endless budget because he's always in Claude. Like, we was on global retreat the other week and he was like, I'm just going to run this. We had to do like a reel or something. And so I'm just going to make the voice match over with Fable. I was like, that's a really good use of tokens.
Wow, yeah.
They're doing really fun things like that. But yeah, and I think the way I'm talking to a lot of business owners about it as well, it's also thinking even further ahead of the way SEO packages go in the future. I think it was the director of Brain Labs, or CEO of Brain Labs, was talking at an Agency Hackers event, and he turned around and said, maybe in the future we'll be charging clients or potential clients based on token usage of what we estimate our token usage is going to be versus hourly rate or like value or base pricing or whatever that looks like. And I thought that was a really interesting point of view as well. So we never know.
That's really interesting.
What brings. Yeah, I thought so. I was like, oh, that's very clever.
Almost having a packet or a supplemental package, or maybe it's an add-on for token usage in addition to the retainer. That's interesting.
Super interesting. And same as we're looking at doing that for like prompt tracking and things. Like if clients want extra prompt tracking or like anything specific that we know is going to be like big budget with the tools, that's an add-on. Like we're just not always going to have to or be able to absorb that cost kind of thing.
So as we start to put more and more AI workflows into our typical deliverables, the costs are going to rise. As the agency grows, your costs are going to rise. And I think that's okay, especially if it's making the team faster and more efficient. I wonder if you could give one or two specific examples of like a pretty typical deliverables, like a tech audit or a content audit. Could you share like one of the things that you have been able to put a tool in place or put an AI workflow in place to make that big deliverable a little quicker?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's two off the top of my head. Standard content briefs. They would normally be done by the SEO specialist, breaking down, these are the keywords we need to include, and these are the page titles and meta descriptions, and this is the structure of the page and things like that. Now we've got an automated workflow where we use NA10 actually to kind of connect this all up, but I think it's with Claude. It was ChatGPT, but I think we moved it over from Claude to Claude. But it's in projects, like Claude will prompt Claude to build the content briefs out. That then builds out the content briefs. It pulls through from keyword mapping that you've done already sitting in a Google Drive folder that then pulls it through via NA10. And then as it builds the content brief out, you have to answer like 2 or 3 questions based on, is it an e-com? Is it this? Is it that? And then it builds out a standard template, pulls in the keyword mapping, and then goes and actually saves back into the client folder. In some cases, can email it straight out to the SEO specialist or adds onto the Monday content board. So it's all kind of like automated and all connected. And then another one's like an IA structure mapping. So even just plugging in like a client website, an e-com website, and Claude will basically go through all of the filters, all of the products, looking at all of the different sub-collections that could potentially be built out that's not already there, and then provides that as a recommendation and builds it out as like a cool Excel file, which historically, like I've done these manually myself and it takes blooming ages to get it done. So it's been a huge time saver. And then you go through and you just validate like, yeah, this makes sense. No, it doesn't. It tells you how many products it's got for each one. And yeah, that's an evolving tool as well. But it's one that's been a really exciting launch for us recently internally. So that's been great too. But just going back as well, just because I've had a bit of a brainwave, sorry, about the token usage and things like that we were talking about a minute ago. Thinking about those costs and thinking about how that then gets run. Potentially, we don't need to hire as many people like physically as what maybe we would have done before. So I definitely envision the US doing more in terms of annual recurring revenue with a significant amount less people than what Australia's doing, say in 5 years' time or whatever that is, if we project. But then rather than having a hiring budget as high as what it would have been and forecasting based on that, then maybe that is your token usage budget instead, and kind of like split it out like that a little bit more. So yeah, just to add on to the previous question.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? I mean, you could see where some of that, a portion of someone's salary or maybe the full salary just gets transitioned over to, token usage because you maybe need 1 less headcount or 2 less headcount. Is there anything, as you've been experimenting and sort of building out these tools, is there anything you wouldn't automate today with AI? Like for whatever reason, like that's just off limits for now. It's just not good enough right now. It might be in the future, but anything off limits in terms of how you guys are thinking about this?
Yeah, anything like strategy wise, I think it's interesting to use it for like strategy ideas, but like actually going, this is your formalized strategy, I think it's very generic. I've tested a whole different, loads of different prompts, built a project, tried to be as specific, even testing it for StudioHawk, and it is very generic what it spits out. So I also think you just need that personal understanding of a business, no matter how much you kind of pull into it. Like you just never, like it's just not going to have the same. May do better job at like competitor analysis, like and automate that a little bit faster, but I don't see like the strategic thinking and commercial thinking being as strong as what an individual with experience and like actually having had conversations with someone who kind of runs the business and works in the business well. So I'd say that's probably the big thing. The same with anything like creative, and then client comms, like you can get it to write an email, but it's very dry a lot of the time. Like it's very like, you can tell it's AI, and I despise talking to AI bots, going on chats. So I'm just like, talk to a human. I just want to talk to a human, answer my questions. Stop sending me to the help center. So I think that's definitely another thing as well.
With the success of the Atlanta office, you could certainly see in the future opening, another office in the US somewhere. Is there a piece of advice, that you would recommend to this new co-founder or person that would sort of open this office that you would give them in your 18 months of experience so far?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value of having everyone in office, at least to start with. So we are 5 days a week in office. We are moving to a hybrid model in the very near future, just to give the team a little bit more flexibility. But at least for the first 12 months of this office opening, or 18 months as it has been now, it's been absolutely vital having everyone in a room together, learning from each other to build that culture and build the way, like the StudioHawk way. So yeah, as much as, we are a remote first world. I mean, I'm sitting here remote, you're sitting here remote right now, but especially bringing in juniors, like we need everyone in a room.
It's been tough for us because I think Joe would say the same thing. Like that experience in the office at Razorfish was invaluable. And here we are sort of running a remote first agency. So I certainly see the value in it, but it's tough to figure out.
Yeah, it is for talent acquisition as well. And I think that's where we'll probably end up having maybe a bunch of remote offices around the US, with like Atlanta being our kind of core HQ. And then maybe we have a couple of people in New York or a couple of people in Chicago, a couple of people in Colorado, like wherever that ends up being, where we just tend to source talent from, but still just trying to have at least a couple of touch points like in person during the week as much as we can, and then just trying to have team events, fly people in, and just really trying to harness that as much as possible. But yeah, I see that being the next stage of StudioHawk US, maybe in another year or two. But the Atlanta hub is just great for talent sourcing anyway. So I think we're in a bit of a gold mine there, which has been great.
It's a great city. Let's start with rapid fire. I've got one. It's my least favorite word. It's 7 syllables. Canonicalization. How do you explain that simply to an executive and why it's so important?
If you have a duplicate page and you only want one of them to show in Google, then you need to put a canonical tag that says to Google, this is a duplicate, only show this one. Done.
Perfect. I was curious about how you think about hiring. So what is the best hire when you're scaling? Is it a strategist, an operator, or a communicator?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'd say an operator, because you can train communication and train strategy, but you need someone who is not afraid to get their hands dirty.
Love it. Love it. Pole fitness or paddleboarding? Which one is more like technical SEO?
Pole fitness is actually so hard. SEO can be really hard.
I couldn't do it.
Honestly, that's literally like definitely pole fitness.
What's a browser extension you can't live without?
Ooh, the redirect path. I love it. It just shows me so many things under the hood. Or the Marketing Syrup SEO Pro extension, just to add that one in.
I want to ask about this one. It may not be a rapid fire, but you've mentioned somewhere where you have sort of a collection of black t-shirts. Yeah. I have done the same thing in the past. I've sort of opened it up to some white and grays as well. But what is the main reason for that? I'm curious if it's the same as mine.
I was a massive emo kid growing up. Very into my heavy metal rock music, like still am to this day. Loads of like rock music gigs, things like that, and just collected a bunch of black t-shirts and black band t-shirts along the way that still live in my wardrobe to this day.
You spent a little time early in your career as a music journalist. I've seen. Was there like a concert you got paid to go to that you got to write about?
Yeah, most of them. So rather than paying me, they paid me in the ticket. They were like, "Here, have a ticket to this festival, have a ticket to this gig, and just give us write something." Yeah, Download Festival in the UK. It's kind of like Rock am Ring in Germany, like that kind of like big rock music festival. 3 days. I think I was there for 5 actually. Wednesday to Sunday, music on the whole time. I saw Metallica, Black Sabbath, and Iron Maiden all headline, Slipknot. Like, yeah, it was great. It was an experience, and it was in the pouring rain for the entire weekend, which is always fun.
My God. Sometimes that makes it better, right? It's like that makes it a little bit more memorable.
Oh, definitely.
All right, last one. A book, I don't know, maybe even a recommendation that you received from someone that helped change how you lead.
Ooh, that's a great question. It's probably not so much a book, although there is one called How Mindsets Change, which has been really interesting. I can't remember who wrote that, but that's more thinking about like the impact of advertising and like how you talk to people and like how they then respond to you, and then how you can then essentially like change their minds and change their attitudes to things. That was really interesting. But there is she used to be an SEO, I think, but now she's like a confidence trainer called Kirsty Hulse in the UK. And yeah, she's been phenomenal with like just helping me see like outside of, hey, you just need to do work and you need to time track and this needs to be done the way it needs to be done. And thinking bigger picture, being able to walk into a room and like actually, own the room, but then listen and understand how people are interacting with you to then be able to lead a lot better as well. So yeah, I think probably those two are like the main ones off the top of my head. There's so many though. I read a different book every other day. That's
great. We're always looking for recommendations. Joe and I were just talking about this yesterday, that we're a little short on recommendations for each other. So if you have any, if you think of any after the podcast, definitely shoot them our way. Well, Sophie, this has been great. I'm so glad we were able to finally get this on the calendar. Hope we can do it again soon. Please let our listeners know where they can find you online.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's probably the best and the one I'm most active on at the moment. So yeah, just Sophie Brannon on LinkedIn, and but Instagram as well, Sophie Brannon SEO. There is the personal one, but that is locked down. So go on the company one. So yeah, Sophie Brannon SEO on Instagram, Sophie Brannon on LinkedIn, and I'm going to start my X or Twitter back up again as well. So again, just Sophie Brannon SEO on there as well.
Amazing. Are you going to be speaking anywhere soon, or?
Yeah, I've got a few. So I've got a event in Atlanta in October, potentially Brighton SEO in San Diego on a roundtable there as well, and then a couple over in the UK too. One called GEO Elite, which I'm really excited for. I think it's the first like GEO specific conference that's happening in the world at the moment. So that'll be fun.
Sorry, what was it? It was GEO Elite?
Oh, Elite.
Okay, got to check that one out. Well, thanks again for being on the Page 2 podcast. And for those listening, if you enjoyed the show, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.